Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm Garry Adelman. You're with the American Battlefield Trust. We got Andy Poulton behind the camera. We're about to have Sarah K. Bierle come on and take us home as we talk about the Shenandoah Valley, not in general, but in 1864. And man, is there a lot to talk about. Now, let me zoom way out. It is the winter and getting into the spring of 1864. Here's Lieutenant General U.S. Grant has 5 grand movements he plans. You've heard of them, less well known as the Red River Campaign and another one under Butler, sort of between Richmond and Petersburg. The more famous ones, of course, the march toward Atlanta, what would become the Overland Campaign toward Richmond. And then there's a 5th one, supposed to be movements here in the Shenandoah Valley. And some of those initial movements, 3 of these things between Richmond and Petersburg, the Red River Campaign, and the movements in the valley, which results in the Battle of Newmarket in mid-May of 1864, they're not going to go really well for the North, and that's why you hear about the grinding movements of the Atlanta Campaign and the Overland Campaign in 1864. After the fight at Newmarket, the Shenandoah Valley is sort of clear, and as the Union and Confederate troops get increasingly mired in the trenches of Petersburg, Robert E. Lee has no initiative. He is going to detach somebody who he knows he can trust with an independent command, Jubal Early. He's going to send them over toward Lynchburg and the Shenandoah Valley. Lots to talk about there, but let me just suffice to say that Early gets there and ends up chasing out any Union armies. Hunter, who's retreating all the way to the North Pole or something like that, is going to move, and Early's going to move north. That's down the valley as you move northward, and he's going to go all the way up toward Harper's Ferry. He's going to turn toward Frederick, Maryland on his way to Washington, D.C., where maybe he'd be able to capture the city. Maybe he'd be able to liberate some Confederate prisoners at a remote prison in Maryland as well. Famously, I think you know what happens. He's going to get held up by Lew Wallace at Frederick, Maryland, where some reinforcements show up, and there's going to be an intense battle, the Battle of Monocacy, the battle that saved Washington, which the Confederates will win, but it buys the Union one crucial day for more reinforcements to man the defenses at Washington, D.C. Here comes Jubal Early, tired after that fight, finally arrives and finds those trenches are occupied, strongly occupied by Union veterans of the 6th Corps. There's a fight there, the Battle of Fort Stevens, after which Jubal Early will start to move out of that area, and he will be chased by the veterans of the 6th Corps and some other troops, and that's going to set up all sorts of fighting as we approach the Shenandoah Valley once again, and that's going to be covered by Sarah K. Bierle.
Thanks, Garry. So as the Confederates are going back into the Shenandoah Valley, they are going to be pursued by Union troops, including soldiers from the 6th Corps that has been shifted up from the Petersburg area to help defend Washington. They're going to be pursuing the Confederate Army back into the Shenandoah Valley. The Battle of Cool Spring happens. Fighting occurs on July 17th and 18th, and then other battles occur as the Confederates continue to fall back into the Shenandoah Valley. We have the Battle of Rutherford Farm. We have the Battle of 2nd Kernstown, all of those in July 1864. August is a quieter period, but there's a gathering of Union forces into the area. There is a need in the Confederate strategy for the Shenandoah Valley to be conquered. Confederates keep using the Shenandoah Valley as their avenue for armies, just like Early did, to come up, swing around, threaten Washington City. Grant, Lincoln, other decision makers on the Union side are getting tired of having to deal with these threats coming out of the Shenandoah Valley. Then there's also the strategic supply situation. Prior to the Civil War, the Shenandoah Valley produced about 20% of the grain grown in Virginia. It had been a successful growing year for the farms in the Shenandoah Valley region in the summer of 1864. Robert E. Lee's army at Petersburg, other Confederate forces are anticipating a good fall harvest, food that is going to add to their military supply, see them through the winter of 1864-1865. If that food supply is cut off, it is going to make even more challenges for the Confederate armies still in the field. Ulysses S. Grant decides to put General Philip Sheridan in command of Union forces in the Shenandoah Valley. Sheridan needs to protect Washington, destroy the Confederate forces in the valley, prevent them from making any more of these raids and attacks, and if he can crush the supply situation, destroy the crops, destroy the harvest, these are objectives that are presented to Sheridan. He's going to take command of a group of Union corps. He's going to use these troops to fight a series of battles that we refer to as the Autumn Campaign of 1864 in the Shenandoah Valley, or the Shenandoah Valley Autumn Campaign. The big battle that starts off this campaign is the Battle of Third Winchester, which is fought on September 19th, 1864. Confederate forces are forced to retreat south in the Shenandoah Valley, giving up the strategic city of Winchester for the last time. Winchester, a city that's changed hands many, many times during the Civil War, will now remain in Union hands for the remaining months of the war. As the Confederate troops fall south in the Shenandoah Valley, there's fighting, there's small skirmishes along the way, but they will attempt to make a stand at a place called Fisher's Hill, which is a piece of high ground that runs across the Shenandoah Valley. The Battle of Fisher's Hill is also a Union victory. Confederate troops are forced to fall back. As Confederate troops fall back from the fighting at Fisher's Hill, they open up the middle section of the valley to Union control. And this is where we begin to see, by the end of September into the early days of October 1864, a period that is referred to as the burning. It is a systematic destruction of the crops, barns, and mills in the Shenandoah Valley. Soldiers were not supposed to be burning homes, and they had also been given orders that if a widow made an appeal, said that she was a widow, they were supposed to spare her farm. Did this always happen? No. There is massive destruction, hundreds of barns, dozens of mills burned in the middle portion of the Shenandoah Valley and into the northern part as well. Confederate civilians and soldiers understandably react to this destruction, and they want revenge for what has happened. They are also realizing that their food supply, whether they are civilians or whether they are soldiers, has been greatly impacted by this systematic destruction. Sheridan and his Union troops, soldiers, cavalry, artillery, begin moving northward in the Shenandoah Valley as they carry out the burning. They're going to settle around the area of Cedar Creek, just north of the village of Strasburg. Jubal Early and his Confederates will follow in their footsteps, seeing this destruction left behind. Early wants to make a counterattack. Can he win a victory? There are other things at stake on the larger perspective of the Civil War. 1864 is a presidential election year in the North. Early is hoping that a Confederate victory in the Shenandoah Valley might alter the election results, might make it so Abraham Lincoln is not elected to a second term, might make it possible for the Confederacy to secure some type of peace which would allow them to stay a separate nation. There's a lot at stake. Early devises a surprise attack and launches it on October 19th, 1864 in the early morning hours. The Battle of Cedar Creek rages all day, but a Union counterattack against Early's attacks is going to drive the Confederates back into a final retreat in the Shenandoah Valley. The Union victory at Cedar Creek, combined with the fall of Atlanta earlier in the fall and Union operations around Petersburg, helped to secure Abraham Lincoln's presidential election. We just gave you a very quick overview of the Shenandoah Valley Campaign in the autumn of 1864. There's a lot more to explore. We want to invite you to watch the next videos in our series as we go and visit some of these battle-specific places. We'll have special guests joining us, and we look forward to sharing some of these beautiful places that had such great impact during the final autumn of the American Civil War. I want to thank Garry Adelman for letting me come and share some Shenandoah Valley history, Andy Poulton behind the camera, and we thank you for watching. We hope that you'll join us on this journey through 1864 history, and thank you for all that you do to support battlefield preservation and education.
Hello, this is Trace Atkins. To stay up to date on all the latest and coolest videos, please subscribe to the Trust YouTube channel. Preserve, educate, inspire.